This is Jen from Thread Honey, and today I'm going to walk you through the British Butterfly embroidery tutorial. This design is available in my shop as a PDF download, stick and stitch embroidery kit, as well as a full embroidery kit. If you've purchased one of my kits, you'll receive the embroidery design already printed onto the sticky stabilizer. If you've purchased this pattern as a PDF download, I include the instructions for how to print your pattern onto the stabilizer available in my shop. You'll start by removing the backing and placing it onto an object of your choice. For this project, I opted to use a sweatshirt, but I also love stitching on denim, cotton, or linen. After placing your design, you'll place your embroidery hoop onto the item you're working with. Unscrew the hoop and place the inner hoop behind your item. Then place the outer hoop on top and screw tightly to close the hoop. You want your fabric nice and tight so that's easier to stitch. I'm working with a 5-inch hoop, so I'll be moving the hoop around to the other set of wings once I finish on this side. The stitches will be strong enough that you can tighten the hoop on top without damaging them. To start stitching, first cut off your floss at a manageable length. I recommend about 8 inches if you're newer to embroidery. For this project, we'll be working with 3 strands of embroidery floss at a time. Embroidery skeins come with 6 strands, so we'll be splitting it in half. Place 3 of the strands off to the side to use later. Next, thread your needle with 3 of the strands, and you'll create a knot at one end. You will not be tying the ends of the string together. To make my knot, I like putting the string around my index finger once or twice and then rolling it with my thumb until it comes off the finger. Then I can slide the knot down and I have a knot at one end. We'll start our stitching by outlining the wings using the back stitch. From the back of the hoop, pull your needle through to the front. The knot will remain at the back of your fabric. You'll create a small stitch by bringing your needle from the front to the back. Next, we'll go a stitch length distance at the back of the fabric and pull the needle through to the front. We'll go backwards, putting our needle through at the end of our last stitch. This will create a continuous line. We'll repeat that, going a stitch length distance at the back of the hoop, pulling the needle through to the front, and then taking our needle back through the end of our last stitch. We'll repeat this process until we finished our pattern or run out of thread. When you run out of thread, create a knot at the back of the fabric and then rethread your needle, again making a knot at one end, and start the process where you left off. The goal with the back stitch is to have a continuous end with no gap, so you really want to try to get that needle as close to that end of that last stitch as possible. After you're finished outlining the wings, we'll do the same thing with the wing details. Again, using 3 strands of our DMC number 310 black embroidery floss, we'll outline all of the details indicated on the pattern using the back stitch. We'll now fill in the wing details indicated on our pattern using 3 strands of ecru embroidery floss. Starting from the back of the hoop, we'll pull our needle through to the front. I like to follow the contours of the shape that we're stitching on, so I'm going to bring the needle diagonally over to the opposite side of the shape. Then I'll place the needle through to the back. Now from the back of the fabric, I'm going to go right underneath the last stitch and pull my thread across the other way to the opposite side of the shape. I'll repeat this process going from right to left, then left to right as I make my way down on the shape. If you find that there are any gaps in your satin stitches, you can always add in an extra stitch between the gapping so that it becomes filled. You can also just go from one side to the other. So instead of going right to left, then left to right, you can go right to left, right to left, right to left. The only downside with that is that you'll use up more of your embroidery floss and it will be a little bit more bulky at the back. But if that feels better for you, then do it. You'll repeat this satin stitch process on all the areas indicated on your stitch guide. You'll also use the satin stitch to fill in the blue areas indicated on your stitch guide with 3 strands of DMC number 517 embroidery floss. Next, you'll use the satin stitch method on the red area indicated on your stitch guide with 3 strands of DMC number 606 embroidery floss. To fill in the large cream area on the lower wings, we're going to be using 3 strands of ecru embroidery floss and use the long and short stitch method. So we'll start by creating a small stitch. Next, I'm going to go back into that corner and create another small stitch following the contours of the design. So with the long and short stitch method, it's a fill stitch that you're using to kind of create not random, but a fill stitch that doesn't look too perfect. So you'll create one long stitch and then a short stitch next to it, a long stitch, and then a short stitch. I have a more detailed video that I'll link to below. With this area, I'm trying to make my stitches the same direction that the butterfly would naturally be in nature. So as I'm starting from that corner, I'm going to work my way from that edge to the left side of the wing. So you can see it's not too scientific in terms of the approach. I'm just making small stitches next to one another. Some are longer, some are shorter, so that the edges don't meet perfectly at the end. You'll continue this technique as you work your way across the shape. I like to work in like little batches of areas, so I'll do a small area and then kind of move on to another area. You're also welcome to go in rows, just any way that feels natural to you to fill up the shape. We'll also use a long and short stitch on the upper area of our wings as indicated on the stitch guide. This is using 3 strands of ecru embroidery floss. This cream detail on the lower wings, we're going to be using 3 strands of ecru embroidery floss in the satin stitch technique. We're going to want to create our satin stitches vertically across the shape, not horizontally. I'll start at the bottom, fill this area up, and then work my way eventually up on top of that red portion. To fill in the black areas indicated on our stitch guide on the upper and lower wings, we'll again be using that long and short stitch method. So just like before, we were trying to go the organic shape that the stitches would be in nature. We're going to start at the abdomen and then work our way out to the left portion of the wings. To fill in the dark gray portion of the lower wings, we'll use 3 strands of DMC number 3021 embroidery floss in the satin stitch method. I'll create my satin stitches horizontally as I work my way up the shape. Once it gets to the top, I'll add in a little curve so that I can make my satin stitches go all the way to the abdomen. To create the black portions of the abdomen, I'll outline first using 3 strands of number 310 embroidery floss and the back stitch method. And then I'll fill it in using the long and short stitch method. I'll do this at the bottom and also in the center as indicated on your stitch guide. You'll stitch the head using the satin stitch method, making your stitches horizontal. This is using 3 strands of DMC number 310 embroidery floss. You'll stitch the antenna tips using 3 strands of 310 embroidery floss, and you're going to create your satin stitches vertically. So instead of left to right, we'll go up and down to create the tips. We'll stitch the rest of the antennas using 3 strands of DMC number 3021 embroidery floss using the back stitch method. And we'll fill in the rest of the abdomen using DMC number 3021 embroidery floss, first outlining with the back stitch and then filling in with the long and short stitch. You'll repeat all of this to create the wings on the other side. After you're done stitching, remove your embroidery hoop. And that is it. This is how the embroidery will look like before you've washed away the sticky backing. To remove the sticky stabilizer backing, take your entire embroidery project to a sink. Running the embroidery under warm water will dissolve the stabilizer backing. I like to use my fingers or an old toothbrush to make sure all of the backing has been removed. After you're done rinsing off the backing, you can lay your object flat to dry. For the future, I recommend hand washing your embroidered garments. And this is what your project will look like after it's dried. If you're still unsure about any of the specific stitch techniques used in this video, check out my channel for more detailed videos about each stitch. You can find more embroidery patterns, kits, and supplies at my website, thethreadhoney.com.